In 1959, Miles Davis recorded what was to become the best-selling album in jazz history, Kind of Blue. Through this recording, he also introduced the world of music to modal jazz, and he did so right from the very first track by using exclusively the Dorian mode throughout his composition, So What? Now, if you're like most musicians who get into jazz, you've most likely played this seminal recording over and over again and tried to learn everything you can from it. You've probably even spent time singing along with Miles's solo with the intent of internalizing his cool phrasing. And if you've ever hoped you could get your hands on more solos like that one, well, this is your lucky day. A few weeks after the historic Kind of Blue studio recording, Miles taped a live TV recording hosted by Robert Harridge at Studio 61 in New York City. Using the same musicians from the studio recording, he performed several of his newly recorded pieces. Of course, this includes a phenomenal live version of So What? And today, I am excited to teach you, as well as fully analyze, 2 full choruses of Miles's solo from this performance. So if you're not too clear on what modal jazz is by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to properly define it and tell it apart from bebop. I'm Richie Zellen, and I'm happy to welcome you to the Jazz Guitar channel. To get started, I'd like to play the solo, and I will place a link in the info section down below so later you can watch the original performance by Miles too. After this, I will show you the solo note by note and demonstrate all the amazing compositional devices employed by Miles, many of which are not so evident when you first hear the solo. Next, I want to teach you the solo slowly in 4 measure segments and explain what is going on. But before I do, I just want you to know that I have prepared a special study package that you can download. It features a PDF with regular notation and tab of the solo, an MP3 of me playing it, as well as a band-in-a-box file containing the solo, so you can slow it down, loop sections, and even transpose it to different keys. If you don't already own Band-in-a-Box, I am also including a MIDI file which you can open up in the free app MuseScore, which will allow you to do the same. Finally, as a bonus, I am also including the same files for Miles's solo on the studio recording of So What? This is the most complete Dorian Masterclass you'll ever get. And it's available for download for a very nominal fee from jazzguitar.richiezellen.com/premium. And without further ado, I want to begin our analysis of this solo by pointing out 6 recurring compositional elements that serve as its foundation. And I will be referring to them constantly because this is what is going to give you the big picture of how Miles was thinking while developing the solo. With this understanding, you can later adapt and use these elements in crafting your own solo. Furthermore, by identifying these elements, we see evidence of the fact that Miles was a schooled musician, and when improvising applied some of the compositional skills he most likely learned while studying at Juilliard. Here we go. Number 1, the solo is predominantly diatonic with extensive use of the root. If you analyze other solos by Miles recorded before this date, you'll notice more chromatic approaches to the chord tones. So why the sudden change? The answer is pretty straightforward. This is no longer meant to sound like bebop, melodically speaking. By keeping it diatonic, Miles is preserving the pure flavor of the Dorian mode, which is partly what helps define this as modal. Furthermore, he does this by focusing on more of a horizontal or scalar approach in his choice of notes. Think of this in contrast to the bebop style. In modal, we are playing over one static chord for various measures. In bebop, we tend to play over continuous changes and imply the harmonic progression instead through a vertical or arpeggio-based approach, and we often use chromatic notes to target the chord tones. Also in bebop, at the point of chord change, we usually avoid playing the root and instead play one of the guide tones, that is the 3 or the 7, because they better imply the chord change. In modal instead, we are playing over static harmony, and we'll notice that Miles now stresses the root quite often. Number 2, frequent use of call and answer. This concept, of course, isn't unique to modal jazz, and most of you know it dates back to a practice which is said to have originated among African tribes. However, we'll see how Miles, being the master that he was, used this concept effectively in order to keep the listener engaged while playing over a static harmony that otherwise can easily become boring. If you are a new jazz student, you may think that playing over one chord is easier than playing over chord changes. Technically, maybe so, but you'll most likely put your listeners to sleep, so pay attention to how Miles tells a story through his use of call and answer. Number 3, ending of phrases using the second of 2 eighth notes on an upbeat. This is something Miles has always done, and it's a recipe for swing and syncopation. It consists of 2 eighth notes with the second one falling on an upbeat followed by a rest. I like to call it the C-Jam Blues rhythm cell for obvious reasons. And I strongly recommend that you watch a video I did called Miles' Solo Secret Sauce, in which I show you how extensively Miles has used this rhythm cell throughout his bebop recordings. Number 4, frequent use of an ascending Dorian scale starting on the upbeat of 1. And this is something we will see that Miles often used to begin a new phrase. Number 5, use of consecutive quarter notes to emphasize a specific chord tone or upper extension. And last but not least, number 6, use of silence for a measure or more. And of course, this is a Miles trademark, which we can't ignore. So now that I've defined these 6 elements, let's examine how they help structure this solo. And I'm going to play my D Dorian scale up here in 12th position, So, right off the bat, we see Miles starts a pickup to the C-jam rhythm cell, emphasizing the root. And this is also his initial call, and we find the answer in measures 2 and 3. And notice how the answer, just like the call, also ends with the C-jam blues cell again, emphasizing the root. And by doing this, he is establishing it as the central motif of this two-part phrase. And this measure also contains the only non-diatonic note he employs when playing over the D minor in the entire solo. It's an A flat, which basically functions as a blue note here. So by doing so, he is cleverly alluding to the related D minor pentatonic and adding a touch of the blues to the solo. And this is followed by Miles's trademark use of silence, in this instance for the next 7 beats. Let me play it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Measures 5 through 7. Here is the fourth concept I described, which is the use of an ascending Dorian scale starting on the upbeat of 1 and using the root. And this is a standalone phrase which emphasizes the 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, notice that little X at the end of measure 6 here. That's a ghost note. So it's barely audible in the original recording, but it's there. And I'm giving it, the full sound so you can hear it. Measures 8 through 12, Miles starts his next phrase here on measure 8. And in this case, listen to how measures 8 and 9 are the call, and the answer follows starting on measure 10. Also notice how he starts and ends by emphasizing the root. Again, this is followed by Miles's trademark use of silence for measure 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. In measure 13, we have a rhythmical variation of the ascending Dorian scale starting on the upbeat of 1 using the root. That's what we saw in measure 5. The difference is he is now reinstating it in quarter note triplets. And this time he takes it up and ends by holding the 5th of the scale for 2 measures. And by doing this, he is making a clear closing statement for the first 16 measures in preparation for the new section, which will take place next with a modulation up to E flat minor. Let me play this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Measures 17 through 20, here we have modulated to E flat, and measures 17 through 19 begin a new call, which will be answered in measures 21 through 24. And this phrase starts out stressing the 11th, and notice how it goes on to emphasize the B flat or 5th of the mode, primarily in quarter notes. He then uses the 5th over the C-jam blues rhythm cell as his period. And of course, on measure 20, we have Miles's trademark use of silence again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And in measures 21 through 24, here we have the answer for the call on the previous 4 measures. And notice how it emphasizes the root in quarter notes over measures 22 and 23. And as he did in the call, he again ends over the 5th with the C-jam blues rhythm cell, followed also by his use of silence on the final measure. Also notice that the recurring use of these elements keep the phrases unified and help develop a story which the listener can follow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here we're back over the D minor, and these 4 measures again represent a new call. Note that here we have an extreme example of the use of consecutive quarter notes to emphasize a specific chord tone or upper extension. In this case, an E, which is the 9th. And the phrase ends by holding the root for over a measure and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Measures 29 through 32 state the answer as well as conclude the first chorus of Miles' solo. Again, in the first measure here, Miles again is emphasizing the root in quarter notes. He once again stresses it before ending and closing by using the C-jam blues rhythm cell over the 6th of the scale. And this is followed by his trademark use of silence over an entire measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Measures 33 through 36. Here the second chorus starts with a call and answer, and it's interesting to note how, just like he did in the initial measures of the first chorus, here too he begins with 2 short phrases and gradually gets busier, as we'll see in the final 16 measures. And notice that the call consists of the first 2 measures ending on the root with the C-jam blues cell. He's used this element roughly 6 times since the beginning of the solo. In measures 35 and 36, we have the answer, which is a variation of the call. And notice that they both begin by stressing the A or 5th of the D, and both end on the root as well, followed by space. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. Measures 37 through 40. The first 3 measures here are a standalone phrase, that is, no call and answer. The interesting thing here is that in the third measure, he reinstates the motif he played previously on measures 33 and 34, only that an octave lower. Let me play that, 33 and 34. So he played. Now listen to these 3 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, there's that motif from measure 33 played an octave lower. On measure 40, he begins another call using the root, and this is followed by an A flat functioning as a blue note, exactly like he did back in the second measure of the solo. Also notice how he emphasizes the G, which is the 11th at the end of the call on measure 41. He then states the answer on measures 42 and 43 and ends by emphasizing the F or minor third. Note that just like he stated the call with the root, he also begins the answer using the root and again follows it with the non-diatonic A flat. And of course we have his trademark use of silence again over the last measure of the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1. One, 2, 3, 4. Measures 45 through 48. Interestingly enough, he ends the four measures before modulating to E flat minor with a very slight variation of the same phrase he played on measures 5 through 7 of the first chorus. Let's go back and take a quick look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now listen to these four measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Very similar. Measures 49 through 52. Here we have modulated to E flat minor, and Miles gets busier for the rest of his solo. In these four measures, again, we see some extreme use of consecutive quarter notes to emphasize a specific chord tone or upper extension. First with the F, which is the 9th, then with the D flat, which is the flat 7, then the B flat, which is the 5th, and finally with the 9th again, an octave down. There's also a rhythmical motif he establishes as he emphasizes each of these scale degrees. And this is reminiscent of what he did on measures 25 through 28 of the first chorus, only that there he just stressed the 9th. Let's take a look at those earlier measures. Let me play it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's listen now to measures 49 through 52. Of course, this is in E flat. 1, 2, 3, 4. In measures 53 through 55, Miles simply concludes this phrase in preparation to modulate back to D minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in measure 56, he begins the pickup for a standalone phrase back in D minor. And note how once again it emphasizes the root on measures 57 and 58. It then again employs the non-diatonic A flat as a blue note and resolves to the G or 11th at the end of the phrase. 1, 2. Measure 60 begins a call and answer to conclude the chorus. Again, it emphasizes the root and ends on the last three measures, employing a motif Miles has used already 3 times previously throughout this solo. It consists of an ascending Dorian scale starting on the root and on the upbeat of 1 in 8 notes. 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there you have it, the genius of Miles over one chord using the notes of just one scale. I hope you agree with me that this solo is a masterclass in not only using the Dorian mode, but also in understanding the difference between bebop and modal jazz. I truly hope the information I shared will come in handy. As usual, I appreciate your comments and welcome your questions. And if this is your first time on the Jazz Guitar channel and you enjoyed this lesson, please be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on any of my upcoming lessons. Be on the lookout for my next info-filled video. And then, until then, be sure to practice, 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 and then practice some more. Peace be with you. Hasta la vista.